Hello, hello. Going live today. Hoping a few people will join. People who have commented on a few recent posts. So, gonna wait and see if anybody joins. Today I'm hoping to talk about a post that I made that had a lot of response and see where we can go with the conversation. Hi, thanks for joining. We're going to be talking about a post recently that I made about finding yourself and what can be done about that. So hang in just a minute and we'll get started talking about it. Just by background, my name is Sarah. I'm a success coach for women and I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've been doing this for about 2.5 years, working with women pretty much in the middle of life who, struggle sometimes to figure out where they're headed. And I can tell you that without clarity, it gets really overwhelming. So I help them with that clarity process. Oh, hi from Atlanta. Awesome, awesome. Hi, Deborah. Cool. Okay, so a couple things we're going to talk about today. Why do we end up as women in the middle of life feeling this lost? The comments that I saw in the video, of which there were, over 100, it's been shared, I think, 600 times. It's been liked 3,000 times, more than that maybe. Anyway, I think it really struck a nerve, and I've seen quite a few videos where women in the comments are just floundering and they feel like they've lost touch with who they are. Hi, Perennial 311. Glad you joined. So we're going to be talking that through a bit and sort of what do you do if you've, found yourself looking around going, how did I get here? And why does that happen? And how can we avoid it? What can we do about it? So one of the things I want to talk about just briefly is sort of what we've been dealing with. When the past 3 years alone, we've been in this heightened sense of alert. Our bodies are in almost constant fight or flight. And that is a challenge because we can't really relax. And it's when we're in a relaxed state, which is called homeostasis, is when we can kind of get in touch with more about what we care about, what we love. So part of why this is so challenging right this minute is that we have been in this sustained state of panic and figuring out COVID and job loss and everything else. Like, how do I maintain this? So that's a big factor in why we're kind of in this moment. But also, we're nurturers by nature. Women are nurturers. So many of the people who commented on that particular post were saying things like, I had my baby right after college, I got married right away. I don't even know if I knew the person that I really was before I entered into motherhood. And then we get into the middle of life. We have children who may be grown and out of the house, and now we're caring for aging adults, parents. So we never step out of that nurturing role, which is hard. So we are constantly nurturing, and it's our nature, which is great, but we keep giving and giving and giving without noticing how much is getting taken out of our tank. And we rarely take the time to fill that tank before we move on to the next person who needs nurturing. So that is part of why we end up being here. Thanks, Jay Borg, for joining. Glad you're here. This is my first time going live on TikTok, so I'm kind of figuring it out as I go as well. So in terms of taking questions and whatnot, I'll try my best to see them if you type them in. But today we're talking about how we get here to this middle of life kind of place and struggle with how did I get here and how do I adapt. So a couple quick things. I had briefly touched on sort of the challenges we have around, being in that flight or fight state all the time and how that's been a problem for most of us throughout COVID. People who kind of manage this process of dealing well with kids leaving the nest or changes in jobs or changes in your body are people who tend to be more present oriented. They tend to have really great relaxation practices so that they can get their body back to homeostasis. So one of the things that I do when I work with women in this particular situation is to look at their whole self, their whole situation, their health. It could be hormone related. Things change when we get a little bit older, and the way you're feeling about your life could be partly related to how well you're sleeping, how much, how good is your diet, like what's your hormone situation like. So we dive into all of those things. And then the other things that we do is to really kind of examine your mindset, the way we look at things, the way we feel about things, our thoughts and our feelings contribute to how we deal with the situation at hand. And so that's a really important aspect to look at too. And then we talk about, I have a specific framework that I work through. It's 8 steps, but it's a really helpful kind of a framework to give us to ask the right questions to help you specifically get at what is it you're missing in your life. What haven't you been doing for yourself that would greatly enhance your life, and it asks the right questions at the right times. And so the 8 weeks is a very specific journey that we take, and it's really neat because it just about every woman, despite how different her life is and how different her experiences are specific to her, where she was raised, what her family life was like, the kind of things she learned about herself growing up, were different. And yet everybody takes this similar journey, and it's really neat because it's very intentional. So sometimes we're looking at really high level, what do you dream about? What are things that excite you? What are you excited to try? To very, very in the weeds kind of conversations about your background and how you grew up and what were some of the messages that you received when you were younger. So we also work, I mentioned mindset, we work on conscious thought, the part of our brain that is conscious all the time. And then we also work on subconscious thought. So, it's an amazing, life-changing journey. Awesome, literary assistant. Thank you for coming here, Melissa. Glad you're here. And Melissa's actually been on that journey with me. So she's been through the coaching program. So it's kind of cool to have a client on here. But really, more to the point, you all wanted to know sort of tips you could manage. And so I have a lot of prompts that I post on TikTok. But I think really spending the time, having a nice morning routine where you get up in the morning and don't look at your phone. Don't get right on to the email and get caught up in your day. So many of us wake up and we're immediately sucked into the day, whatever is there for us, like who's pinging me at work, what kid needs something from me. A big life-changing tip that you can take is to get up early, maybe even just 10 minutes earlier than somebody else in the house, to carve some time for you to really, journal and think about what it is that you're looking forward to the day. How do I want to start the day? What thoughts do I want to start the day with? Because if you wake up and allow those thoughts to take you with it, the train has left the station and the day just starts to go and unfold that way. But I've found that if you start the day with, a controlled set of thoughts, what are the thoughts I want to have today? How's my day going to be? Starting very intentionally, it can go a whole lot better. Okay, so that's a few thoughts about the conscious mind. So we take an approach of like, what are the thoughts that you're having? How can we kind of work with those? And then we look at the subconscious, because by the age of 35, you are already a memorized set of thoughts, beliefs, about yourself, things that have been programmed to you from the ages really 0 to 7 is when we're most malleable, or our brain is most malleable, and we're picking up messages from all over: coaches, teachers, daycare providers, babysitters, parents, not just parents, right? And those people are kind of creating messages that we internalize. And so and most of those are, you don't remember. So from 0 to 7, how much of that time do you really remember? What kind of messages were you getting? Maybe you do. Maybe, unfortunately, you are quite aware of some pretty bad messaging you received when you were young. But we work on the subconscious mind because, some of that stuff is buried very, very deep, and it kind of impacts how you feel about yourself. Maybe somewhere along the line, someone told you weren't good enough, or your weight wasn't good, or you didn't look right, or you didn't act right. I'm working with a client right now whose mom flat out told her, I wish you were a boy. I wish you'd been a boy and I didn't want you. And so some of those things happen. And so we work on deprogramming those and reprogramming better thoughts. So just for anybody who's joined, we're talking about what to do in the middle of life and how we get here as nurturers. And we sort of look around and go, how did my life get like this? I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know how I got here. And part of that is because we're nurturers and we put everything we have into the people we're raising or the people we're caring for, grown adults or our parents, whatever. And then we turn around and we don't remember who we were. And it's a very common problem, which is why I do what I do. It's a very common problem. The question that remains is, what do we do about it? I mean, I've seen women work on this a lot on their own, and it is hard. I mean, there are a million self-help books out there. If it only took a self-help book to get through this or to answer this question for yourself, there would probably be only 4 or 5 self-help books needed, right? But I found that it's a really important process to work through with someone. And I don't care if that's, me or someone else, like you should probably work with someone, even if it's a friend, to kind of work through what do I care about anymore and what's valuable to me. I've also found some really good journals, like sort of workbooks that are great. And I think the Untamed workbook by Glennon Doyle is a really good one for this sort of self-introspection, because essentially what's happened is we've just gotten so pulled away from the things that really mattered to us that it's hard to find our way back. And it asks really wonderful questions to get you to explore certain topics around your values and, what you used to love and what you did as a child, or, things that made you sparkle inside, those kind of questions that are really important. And then one parts of the process I work through is how do we bring some of that back into your life, and what are some ways that we can develop those areas of your life so you have some balance to the challenges, because the challenges aren't necessarily going to go away. The challenges of raising children or caring for aging adults aren't necessarily going to go away, but what can we add in that's going to balance out the challenge and this frustration? So anyway, a little bit back to, let's see, any other questions while I'm doing this? No, so far not much. Michelle, hi Michelle, thanks for joining. If anybody has questions, please just type them in. I'm going to take those too. I'm just talking while I'm waiting for questions. So if you've got any, again, just for anybody who's joined, I'm going over a post that I made a few weeks ago where people really responded very passionately about how lost they felt and the need to kind of find themselves. And I was just mentioning, I think it's a really challenging journey to take on your own. The one great thing about being a coach is it's like being a mirror. We kind of hold up to you what we see, because oftentimes we just can't see it. We're so bogged down in the thoughts that we've had in our mind and the stories we have. I mean, I think one woman on that post said something like, she said something like, I don't think I'll ever find her again. She's lost forever. And I thought, ooh, what a story to tell yourself. If you tell yourself, every cell in your body that's listening to you, I'm lost forever, then you're probably going to be lost forever. But we work to kind of change those stories and figure out what's maybe an easier concept to live with, where you could begin telling yourself, I'm working on it. I'm working on getting back to me. How many weeks is the program? It's 10 weeks. It's 8 steps. So over 10 weeks, we work through 8 steps. Thank you for your question. It is very, very intentional. So the walk we take, the journey we take together is kind of up and down and up and down. And it's, it builds upon itself. And that's pretty much my philosophy around figuring this out for people. It's kind of like, how do you can kind of only take one step at a time. So we build a very basic foundation. We get more self-aware. We get some clarity for you around what it is that you're sort of not able to see, because that's the hard part, right? If we could see it ourselves, we wouldn't be in our head all the time, but it's so hard. Like when you're thinking over and over every time you get up every morning, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? What's my next step? I don't know. I'm so confused. It's hard to get out of that cycle. So working with someone else, whether it's me or anybody, a friend, it's just helpful to have someone say, well, what do you care about? What do you want to focus on? What do you love? What did you used to love when you were a child? What could you spend hours doing that it didn't matter? And those are the questions that help a person uncover sort of just a sliver of something they want to pursue. And then that just starts the ball rolling. And in my experience, as soon as you start to take a step in the direction of that you want to take, all of a sudden there's some affirming behavior that starts happening. You begin to feel like, oh, okay, I'm feeling this now. Okay, there's some momentum going. And actually the universe will often give you some reinforcement, like, yes, keep going. Just about everybody I've worked with after the first or second session, they begin to almost see signs that they're on the right path. And that isn't necessarily magic. It's just that you begin to be open to the idea of a new way of living. I'll put it that way. Okay, any other questions I can answer? Hi, Miguel. Hi, Jose. Awesome. Okay, so today we're talking a little bit on this live about how women kind of get to this place where they feel lost and don't know who they are anymore. And it's a very common problem. And the video that I shared, I think it had 200 shares to other women. It had 100 comments. People are just feeling really overwhelmed. They're kind of, maybe most of them at least, are in the middle of life, maybe in their 40s, late 40s, early 50s. Kids have moved out. Maybe they're in a divorce situation. Lots of people are talking about that. All they ever have known is married life and home life, and they just don't know where to start. I'm worried about my grades right now. I'm literally on the verge of tears. Oh, I'm sorry, Emily. Okay, so deep breath. This is a big moment for us to talk about this. Calming down, calming the system. We cannot be successful from a place of panic and anxiety. So if I have one tip for you, Emily, it is to calm your nervous system. It's not just our thoughts that get panicked, it's our body. And when our body is in a panic state, it cannot perform the way you want it to. We think adrenaline helps us perform, but it really does not. The highest performing people are those who can maintain calm confidence. So, Emily, I want you to find calm confidence today. Take some deep breaths, step away, take a walk, let ideas come to you. There's a reason why when we meditate, ideas come. There's a reason why when we do something like tapping or deep breathing, we get good ideas. So, please try to focus on calming your system down. You'll do better on your grades. Hi, Nikki. Thanks for following. Any other questions that I can answer? We're talking today about what do we do in the middle of life when we've gotten to the point where we are caring for other, maybe young children, sometimes older parents, or maybe our career's faltering. Another big factor, and I talked about this earlier, is hormones. So women in the middle of life, their bodies are changing. So we don't just have situational things that are changing, we also have health things. And so when I work with women, we look at everything. We look at where their mindset is. We look at where their health is. We really talk about hormone changes and how that can be impacting them. Sleep is really, really elusive for women in the middle of life. And if you're not sleeping well, everything always seems worse, right? Everything seems worse when you're not sleeping well. And so then the mind goes, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to get my career back on track. I'll always be someone who's caring for someone else. So we definitely start by looking at, how your health is, what your sleep is like, and what your daily routines are. Daily routines are really important. I can't type. Hi. Awesome. Emily, thanks for following. Cool. Any other questions? Some of the questions that I got on that particular post were, how do I get in touch with what I really like to do and the things that I really enjoy after so many years of caring for others? It's hard. If you're in a place where you have some time, though, however, why not dedicate that to you? I think one of the things we don't do very well is spending some time dedicating or devoting time to ourselves. So we often will take on more activity almost to avoid this process. Do you know some people who kind of will do anything for anybody else, are the first to step in and volunteer, the first to put a lot on their plate? Oftentimes that's avoidant behavior because they're not really interested in seeing what's underneath the covers for their own emotional stuff, and they're actually avoiding it. This can be true of overthinkers, overeaters, overshoppers, right? We have lots of mechanisms to avoid feeling, and sometimes the key is really stopping, taking a moment, and assessing what's really going on with us, which can be hard. Cool. Okay, a couple more minutes. What else did I want to talk about? Let's talk about a few more tips. So I think one of the big things is you have to really believe that it's possible that things could get better. One of the challenges, I think, is that some people who are in this space where they feel as though their life will never get better is that they have believed that story. Either they've been told it by other people or they just haven't seen change, so now they really are convinced that their life is not going to change or get better no matter what happens. And that is a story they've told themselves, and we would work on dismantling that, because sometimes it just takes the smallest little turn to the left or turn to the right, just a degree change, just one little thing going well, changes the story to where I can believe now that my life will get better. And I think that's really important. Without that challenge, and that's part of my job, right, is to give you a few challenges to say, how about we try this? And one of the first things I'm going to do is ask about your morning routines. So many of us Oh, thanks. My wall is cool. Just wallpaper things. One of the first things that women do is they get up right away and check their phone, right? Because we're so busy and we've gotten into that role of being so important and so vital to somebody, which is true. But we check our email, we check social, we want to see what everybody else is doing. We get caught in that comparison trap a bit. We get already sucked into a work email where we're starting to feel like anxiety over work. So the first feeling we have when we get up out of bed is anxious, right? Oh my gosh, the day is starting without me. I need to get on my computer. Even working from home, it's almost been worse, right? So my advice would be to start your morning with a routine of your liking that you select. So maybe you take a moment when you first wake up and open your eyes to be thankful that you woke up that morning and be grateful for the things that you have. Oh, thank you. That's awesome. So to be grateful for the things you have, and then, focus on the kind of day you want to have. What kind of day do I want? I want my first meeting of the day to go really well. I'm going to set an intention today that I really focus on my eating. I want to eat healthfully today. That would be loving myself today if I ate well. And I'm going to drink a lot of water today and really take some breaks during the day, get up to stretch and care for myself. I think part of us martyr ourselves by never taking time for ourselves, and that isn't particularly healthy. So we have to build time in, and you have to be dedicated enough to take that time. Like, love yourself enough to say, I'm going to get up and take a walk. Because this whole work from home culture is great and it's awesome. And many of us have managed it very well, but others do not. And they kind of have, don't know when to turn the laptop off at night or don't know how or when to take breaks. So I work with each individual person about what their life is like, what their routines are like, and create healthy routines that give them that time to fill the tank back up. Because you can't pour from an empty cup, right? And people know that, but they don't have the mechanisms, I guess, or the rituals or ideas or routines to create a healthier life where they build in that time. So that's one of the things we do. I don't have social media. My 3 boys are grown up. I feel like I don't know who I am without them. Yes, I know. Hope it's hard. You are an individual without your boys. You are a strong woman who's raised children, and you have a lot to offer. We have to get back to what that is. And mother aside, that's part of your identity. You probably have other parts of your identity too, but identity formation takes place kind of when we're younger, and then we become moms, and that just sort of takes over. But there are probably parts of you that you haven't explored in a long time, and we would talk about how would you get to that stuff. But my first suggestion would be for you to sit down with a journal and really just start writing. Just write. The practice of writing is so important. Just start writing and see what comes up. What did I love to do when I was young? When I was a teenager, what really made me laugh a lot? What made the time pass where I didn't even notice when I was in middle school? What sort of things did I enjoy? And then the other part is being creative. Like, find something that you can be creative with, because as I said earlier on today's live, we've been in this state of kind of heightened panic for so long, and when our body is in that like alert mode on, and we've been in that mode for a long time now with COVID, probably longer than any I've ever noticed, at least in my lifetime, and I'm 50. It's really hard to calm that down unless we purposefully calm our body down. Our nervous system is just constantly going right now. And so if you're not a meditator, if you're not doing walking meditation, if you're not taking some quiet time in prayer, if you're not taking some time in the morning to journal, if you're not maybe doing a little yoga, something that helps signal to the body that you are okay, you'll kind of stay in that space. And when our body goes into homeostasis, which is when the heart and the mind are aligned, it's much easier to create. It's much easier to think. It's much easier to get ideas. Am I a high school teacher? No, I am not. I'm a coach for women. And that's what I'm talking about today. Sort of talking to women about how to get back to themselves. So after a lifetime of nurturing others, how do they figure out who they are again? It is a process I think you have to work through with someone else. I've said this before. Being a coach is like a mirror. We just reflect back to you what we see, which is often a really strong, capable, loving woman. She just has kind of forgotten that part of her because something else is kind of broken and something else is hurting. And that's all that sort of she thinks about is the broken, hurting part. But there's so much to a human. And while we may be in that moment right now of hurting, that other person exists, that whole person exists. We just have to expose that part of it. You're welcome, Hope. I hope it's helpful. Please keep following because I offer tips and stuff all along. And also over on Instagram. My handle is at Sarah Harper Huntington on Instagram, so I would love to see you there. I also work in healthcare like so many moms. We care for everyone all the time, not just us. Totally. In fact, for people who are, like, first of all, yes, we're nurturers by nature. And so we're going to give to the people around us. But if you're in healthcare or anything else where you're taking care of people, you need that outlet of taking care of you. Like, what are you doing for you, Hope? I'd love to know. Like, what out of your day, what percentage out of your day is for you? And it doesn't have to be a lot, but every time you take a step in honor of you, every time you take a break and say, I'm just going to go have some water, I'm going to get outside for 5 minutes and come back in, you refresh, you tell yourself you're worth the 5 minutes. So much of our actions, when we keep giving to other people, continue the story of I'm not worthy. We keep pouring out, which means I don't have time for me, and I'm not worth that. I'm not worth that time. Where are you from? I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. Yes, it feels weird to take the time. Yeah, but you have to, right? Otherwise, I think you're going to wear yourself completely down, especially in healthcare. Okay, let's talk about why we feel it's selfish to take time for ourselves. Part of that societal conditioning. I'm not sure how else to say that. It's just societal, right? Yoga helps. I agree. Yoga does help. I don't know how you all feel when you're doing yoga or when you're doing meditation. Those thoughts that come in and whatever can sometimes feel like they're just as pesky, right? But you have to trust that the act you're doing is giving you a bit of a break, and it is changing your neural pathways. Sometimes we do these things and we think, is this really working? You have to trust and believe that the things you do are changing your neural pathways. They are changing your physiology. They might not feel like it at the time, but part of why we build them in, and we ask you to be consistent, and I say we, meaning coaches or anybody trying to help someone take care of themselves, is that dedicating that time to yourself. One, it reminds you that you're worthy of that time and that good treatment, but it actually is helping to build new neural pathways that say this is, that it is healthy for you, whether it's movement or meditation. Those things are actually putting the body in homeostasis, which is what you want. You want to stop the fight or flight syndrome. And because I hope you work in healthcare, I mean, you must be in constant fight or flight syndrome these days with, all the COVID stuff. And so you kind of really, really need to intentionally carve out some time where you're not thinking about those things, that you're dedicating time just to you. It takes time for the journey. Yes, it does. It does. I think, let's talk about schedules. So a lot of times I hear women say, I don't have time for that, or, if I had time for that, I would have already done it. But one of the things a coach will do is hold you accountable for how you spend your time. And a lot of us spend it scrolling, or a lot of us spend it on Netflix. And while we do need downtime and just like brainless stuff, sure, of course. But if we balance that out with the amount of time you're also working and then doing things for yourself, we almost always come last. So when you work with a coach, they kind of put you on a bit of a schedule of sort of like how balanced do you want or need your life to be where you're giving back to you. Let's see. Is true Americans say F word all the time and cheating and drinking? No, I really don't think so. What else? What other questions can I answer for y'all? What were some of the other things I wanted to talk about? Oh, we talked about self-help books earlier, and I'm just going to mention this since we haven't talked about it in a few minutes, is that self-help books are great. I think they can be a big help to people as they're trying to figure something out about themselves. There have been a few written for women in the middle of life, like how do I get back to myself? But in particular, I think the workbooks often that accompany them are even more helpful. And one that I recommend is Untamed Journal by Glennon Doyle, because the whole book is about how to become untamed, how to deprogram ourselves from the societal pressures of always being the nurturers. And so, and it just sort of has you look at your own behavior and the ways in which you're maybe neglecting yourself or abandoning yourself. And so I think that's very helpful. For me personally, as a reminder, in case you weren't on earlier, we look at subconscious thought, conscious thought, whole health, whole person. What are you doing from a hormone perspective? How's your sleep? All kinds of stuff. So it's a very holistic approach. What else? Okay, one of the other things we do is talk about examining your stories. So I can't tell you how many different stories people come up with about their life. Like, there's no way I could do this because I'm not someone who's allowed to do that because this isn't, that's not for me. Or, yeah, that's all fine and stuff, but I tried that. So I will always push back on someone when they give me a story to ask if that's really true. And we will break that down. The other thing we do is spend a lot of time setting goals. What are the best ways to give yourself self-love? Okay, good ones. Great questions. Okay, a couple things from a homeostasis perspective, because remember, again, if we're in fight or flight, there are a couple things we can do to calm ourselves down. Tapping is a good one, but actually the best is hugging yourself. We don't get enough touch in our lives. 100% we're not getting enough human touch. Even if you're a nurse and you're touching people all the time, it's not the same, right? And so, or a doctor, or in healthcare in any way. And so I often will just hug myself. And I work from home with my husband down the hall. I could get a hug from him if I wanted to, but I will often just give myself a hug and rock a little bit because it's loving myself, actually. And we need that. It actually calms the body down. So if I do that for 12 seconds, it's been shown to lower blood pressure, slow your breathing. It's a nice way to do it. Everybody talks about, oh, go get your nails done or go get a massage. That is not self-love. I mean, it's all great, make you feel good for a little bit, but it's not actually giving you what you need. So the question is, how do I give how do we give ourselves self-love? The answer is really like, how do you calm your nervous system? And so tapping is one, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but you move through various tapping points, and I can go over that in another video. But the other is anything that calms your nervous system, deep breathing. So you could do alternate nostril breathing, like, right? You could do that. Meditation, of course, yoga, of course, but anything that is calming the nervous system, because that's when creativity happens. That's when you can really think straight. That's when things are no longer a running dialogue in your mind of all the things you need to do. That creates space between the panic and what's really going on. You're welcome. Awesome. Okay. I think that's probably where I'll end it unless there are any last minute questions. I just thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to kind of share with you some tips and ideas that I have for, what to do in the middle of life. And if you feel like you're lost, certainly reach out to someone, work with someone, talk to someone else about what you're feeling, because I do think in sharing those things, it makes it easier. So, sorry, just checking. They said there's one more message. Okay. Hi, Flo. So in talking with someone else, I think that's where you can expose the things that are important to you. That person is listening for the thing, and particularly a coach is listening for certain signals you give and the things that you talk about, and they can reflect that back to you. So if you're feeling lost, don't go it alone. Don't go it alone. Thank you so much for joining with me, and I look forward to you on the next live.